This is Mick Foley, the Hardcore Legend, and this is InYourHeadOnline.com.
All right, we are back. Welcome to In Your Head Wrestling Radio. I'm the internet icon, Jackie Jones, along with my right-hand man.
1-inch biceps. The Power Goat. That's it. There you go.
Not too bad. Join us right off the bat. We have the franchise, Shane Douglas, with us. How you doing?
Doing great, man. It's a beautiful day in Pittsburgh. This heat wave is finally broken. It's about 75 and gorgeous.
Excellent. And this is a huge show. You know, when I first saw this card, I really thought this wasn't real. Like someone just was playing a joke because like there's so many people on here I want to see. This is like awesome.
Yeah, it really is. You know, a cornucopia of a great list of stars. It's many of the guys like Ronnie Garvin I haven't myself seen for years. So I think most of us are looking forward to just sort of a bit of a reunion, to seeing a bunch of the guys that I admired when I was growing up in the business and learned from coming into the business and wrestled against in the business. So it's going to be a hell of a card that night.
Yeah, and we'll have the links right on the website, but you go to legendsandicons.net, and you can go psychopathiclive.com, jugglogathering.com, and it's only $15 on the iPay-per-view. And we'll go to the card. It's just like it's tremendous, and we have the commercial right on the main page right now, so you can check it out. And you yourself, you're going to be wrestling on the show.
Yes, I've been working with the Juggalo Championship Wrestling for a couple of weeks now, and on board on the business side of things, trying to help them out a bit as they're growing forward and moving forward. You know, I'm surprised and amazed at the job that they've done to get this thing off the ground, but they did it the right way. They launched it as a grassroots company and have slowly tried to improve the company over the years to what their vision of the wrestling business is. And I think now they're looking to take that next step to how to take, this company to the next level beyond that. And this card on Friday night to me is, and not just this card alone, but I mean the entire event that they're going to gathering, and then the wrestling show they have the night before, and then of course the night after. For any wrestling fan, if you've never heard a song from the ICP, you're going to get a lot of great wrestling that weekend, and the rest is like icing on the cake.
Mm-hmm. And if you can't make it live to the actual show, like I said, you can watch it on iPay-per-view all over the world, and it's to be midnight on Friday. It's pretty sweet.
Correct. Yeah, this new technology amazes me. Whenever I was a snot-nosed kid in the business, you had to spend $250,000 cash just to get a satellite uplink, and God knows how many more hundreds of thousands of dollars for the truck and the cameras and the lights and everything else. And now you can just do it on the computer uplink. It's amazing, really, the technology that's available today.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're going to be wrestling Raven, Rhino, Al Snow, Balls Mahoney, and a Mystery Man.
Yeah. I hate to keep on beckoning back to ECW because my career was fairly significant before that. A bit after, but that was my own choosing of walking away from the business like I'd always said I would around 40. But these are guys that I've got a lot of respect for all of them. These were guys that in their own way and in their own time came in. We coined a term in ECW called the Island of Misfit Toys. We were the guys that weren't willing to kiss Vince McMahon's ass, literally or figuratively, and weren't willing to put up with Bischoff's bull crap in WCW. And we all ended up in this little bingo hall company that, like the little engine that could, change the face of wrestling. Raven, Al Snow, Rhino. I've never wrestled one-on-one, so I'm looking forward to being in the ring with them. But this litany of former ECW alums, like I said earlier, it's going to be great to see these guys and to compete against them again, because every one of them in their own right earned the respect that they gained from ECW.
Mm-hmm. When you say that, the Land of Misfit Toys and the guys that, it's like the countercultural stuff. What was it like to see them, ECW as part of the WWE and its own show and, film the same arena as ECW, as WWE?
Well, to me, it was like taking two pencils, sharpening them as sharp as you could possibly get them, setting them up on a table, and then jamming your two eyeballs. It didn't make sense to me. ECW was, by very intention and by the chemistry and by the fundamentals of the company, was never to be seen in alliance with WCW, WWF, or WWE, TNA, NWA, UWF, or any other mainstream company. This was a true revolution at the ground roots level that flipped the middle finger to everybody and anybody that thought differently. So for me to see it suddenly in corporate America, be sort of like taking, Bob Dylan and putting him in a three-piece suit and putting him at the front door of IBM. Just doesn't fit. It just doesn't go together.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make sense. I mean, even if they are going to only bring it back, you would think they want to at least keep what people liked about it. And it just was a totally different. It wasn't anything what ECW was.
Well, clearly, a company like Vince McMahon that is always, head heavy, above the shoulder heavy. Vince is the brains behind it. He's the power behind it, the decision maker behind it. So for what it became, had to be by his sole intention. And I've got, my take on that whole thing, bro, is that, for years prior to that, during and after ECW's existence, when fans around the globe, especially around the United States and Canada, saw something that they thought was really cool or pretty sweet move or pretty vicious or whatever, they would chant ECW in recollection of what they remembered seeing from that company.
Mm-hmm.
I think Vince clearly, one of the most difficult things to sanitize in post-production is sound. If the visual on the television set has 10,000 people standing up and you see them pumping their fists 3 times in the air, they're chanting something, and most fans know that's probably EC-dub. So it's a very difficult thing to sanitize in post-production. So you can either come out and somebody like Vince, who's taken his real-life persona and made it a character that the fans despise, if he comes out there and says, I allow you to stand up and say that, or please stop saying that, whatever, they're going to do it all the more. But there's a clear way, a brilliant move on Vince's part to gain his objective. How do you get the fans to stop chanting ECW? You bring out a new version of it that so totally sucks that nobody will ever want to chant ECW. Maybe it's paranoid on my part. Seems like it served its function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've actually said on the show for years. I mean, it felt like they brought it back to kill off the legacy.
Well, they had all the talent there. I mean, with very few exceptions, they still had the Dudleys that were there. Taz was there. They had Raven. They had Sandman. They had, I think Justin was up there. They had, pretty much all the main talent from the ECW. I was like one of the few people that was still in TNA, and, a couple of us were outside the company, outside that structure. But for a company that had spent millions of dollars on creating quote-unquote farm leagues in Florida, and I think at one point in Tennessee or Louisville or someplace, why do that when you have a company, and Paul Heyman was working for them as well? Mm-hmm. So you could have very easily started your farm league, quote-unquote, with an updated version of ECW. To me, if all the bank transfers lead back to my bank account, you could call my bank account Ric Flair USA for all I care. If the money's going into Shane Douglas's account, I could give a damn less what you call it. Mm-hmm. But, again, I think that clearly depicts what Vince wanted to do. His objective was to kill ECW off. When I was there in 96 for that short-lived stint, he used to beat my ear every single time I encountered him at televisions or whatever, pay-per-views. And he would never, ever say those letters to me, ECW. It was always, hey, Shane, when you worked in the bingo hall company, when you were in the small pond, when you were in the minor leagues, when you were in the blood and guts company, he had all these backhanded euphemisms, but he never called it ECW, so it seemed so incredibly corny to me that years later he would try to rekindle the product. I knew from the outset there was some skullduggery going on. In the end, I think what I said was probably right.
Mm-hmm. Now, back to the ICP. I was just wondering, before you started working for him, before you met him, did you what did you think about these guys? What did you think about JCP?
Well, the Juggalos, especially ICP themselves, I'd known those guys. They've been coming around wrestling for years. They dabble in and they dabble out doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. What I respect about these guys is that, if you'd have looked at them when they first came out years and years ago, it was real easy to write them off. They didn't have that mainstream sound. They weren't rock star looking guys and everything else. But these guys latched on to something, that underbelly of society, those people that that the guy in the 3-piece suit looks down on, the kid that has the earring in his nose or in his tongue or something. And they were able to somehow reach into that population and get their imagination going. And for anybody in America that can understand how business works, especially entertainment, these guys are either the luckiest sons of bitches walking, or they're brilliant. And I don't believe in luck lasting for well over a decade. So I've got to believe that these guys are pretty smart businessmen, or they've got some pretty smart businessmen surrounding them. But I will tell you this: every time I ever saw them, whether it was in WCW or ECW or an independent show someplace, they were always extraordinarily respectful. They were always very willing to put their ideas in and listen to counter ideas. Very open-minded, not the kind of guys come and say, well, hey, we're ICP and we can't do that because we're such big stars to our fans. They've always been pretty cool guys. And I think that's part of what their fans see in them.
Well, why do you think there are some wrestling people, some different websites, some people in wrestling that just look so down on ICP and, even want to publish their stuff?
I'll give you a quote from Gene Simmons of KISS. My idea of success does not hinge on some aging hippie in Rolling Stone magazine. And these guys have become a brand that's worldwide known. The ICP has pretty much done the same thing. It's real easy to write somebody off if your expectation is wrestling is 4 ring posts and 3 ropes and, guys bumping and doing this, and the match has to start a certain way and end a certain way. And, well, that type of product has pretty much been ruled as dead by Vince McMahon's ratings dropping, nearly 80% now, and his stock almost as much. TNA never even having been in the game, albeit having spent 130, 140, 150 million bucks. These guys have been drawing some pretty dang good houses. So, you can't ignore that. When you look at something, if you look at a piece of art and you go to the museum, to me, when I look at some Picasso stuff, I think it's like some third grade kid drew it. But it draws millions of bucks. So clearly something in the art community sees something there that I'm either too stupid or unwilling to see. I think that's what's going on here. There's no one way to say that a genre is right or wrong. Wrestling had been done a certain way for 100 years and made money, and it's been slowly dwindling and dying for the last decade. So I think we need an infusion. That's not to say I agree with everything the Juggalo Championship Wrestling does. But I'm hoping that's part of what they're willing to listen to some new ideas that I can bring on board or whatever. But they're drawing houses that TNA has never drawn, that WWE was in Pittsburgh here a few weeks ago, and I wasn't there, but I heard from multiple sources that it was well under 2,000 people in the new console center. So if this company is drawing 12, 15, 16, 1,800 people, and God knows how many thousands they'll draw at the gathering this weekend, they're clearly latching on to something. Like Gene Simmons said, success ain't hinging on what some mainstream dude sitting in an office at Rolling Stone magazine says. It is what the conditions in the industry say they are at that time. And right now, nobody can argue the fact that JCW Wrestling is drawing some portion of the imagination of that audience. So kudos to them for having the balls to go out and try something different.
Now, this is a true story. Last weekend, we were at the NWA Legends Fan Fest in Atlanta, Georgia, and we've been going for 6 years, and a lot of times people really are not big fans of ICP or Juggalo Championship Wrestling, but there was actually a lot of people talking about the pay-per-view this coming weekend.
Sure. I had thought for years that the wrestling fans were, just slowly splintering away from the wrestling business, and I think some of them have. But I thought it was, reflective in the numbers. 10 years ago, we had 45 to 52 million fans watching per week. If you look at the ratings that Vince has been doing recently and the anemic ratings that TNA has always done, there's under 5 to 7 million watching today. Well, where did the other 35 to 38 million go? I mean, they didn't evaporate off the planet, so did they just go over shoot fighting or what? And I started going to the Comic-Con conventions last year at this time, August of last year, I think it was, up in Chicago. And for 4 days, from 10 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, for 4 days, I had a constant throng of people at my table. I literally would have to walk away from fans to go take a bathroom break. And every single fan said the exact same thing, but in different ways, but the same point. I used to watch wrestling religiously. I was the biggest wrestling fan ever. Haven't watched in years. And I would follow up and ask them, why not? And every single one of them gave the same answer. WWE sucks and TNA's worse. And then they would tell me, man, if something like ECW would start today, if something different would come out today, I'd sink my teeth right into it. So clearly, The wrestling audience is speaking as loud as it can with its vote, and its vote being hitting the changer on the remote control. They ain't buying what the WWE's giving them anymore, and they never bought what TNA gave them. So clearly it's time for something to come back into play, just like ECW burst onto the scene in '93 with, the 1 a.m., 2 a.m. time slots and the cut the effing musics and the chicks putting through tables and everything else. Something like that has to come forward and try to recapture some of that imagination. We could all sit here and argue and say we think JCW is great, we think it's terrible, whatever, but they've got a following. And so that's where a revolution starts. When you have the following and the foot soldiers, who knows where it goes from there? Because it can always be amended, it can always be changed and, finagled and something added, something taken away. But you need the fans first, and JCW has that.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of TNA, what did you think of their last year, their Hardcore Justice pay-per-view?
Well, I went out and was pretty vocal at that point about my disappointment in a company that has spent dozens of millions of dollars, over the $100 million mark, to bring in guys like Flair and Hogan. 1984, brilliant move. 2011, idiotic move. And then turn around and tell guys like Justin Credible and Raven and Sandman and these guys that, they were trying to capture, obviously, the magic of what ECW had been, and then handed these guys basically welfare wages. For a chick that was born into a $1 billion household, raised in a $1 billion household, continues to live and thrive in a $1 billion household, to turn around and ask these guys to go out at their age and put on an ECW performance for $250, shame on you, Dixie Carter. Shame on you. That's pathetic, especially when you're paying Flair $10,000, $12,500 a day, and you're paying Hogan what you're paying him. That's absurd, and that's why I told him to go pound salt. I would take no part in it. Not because I wouldn't have loved to see the guys again, and not because I have any penchant against ECW legacy. I love it. But to me, it comes from a very different place. If any one of us is going to dabble with that ECW legacy for our fans and for our own histories and legacy of that company, we owe it to protect that legacy from the bimbos and from the idiots, as opposed to just jumping on board for $250. That just doesn't cut it for me.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on Dixie Carter?
I think Dixie's an incredibly bright woman that has no idea what she's doing. Any more than I would say, that she can run a wrestling company, would I say, as an incredibly bright woman, she could go in and run IBM for Bill Gates. She's in an industry that, in very few respects, can or should be run like a traditional corporation. And yet she's trying to bring that corporate mindset and acumen to bear in TNA. And here's they say there's no saying that says the proof is in the pudding. She's been at it now for close to 6 or 6.5 years, maybe even 7 at this point. I have no idea. But they've never, ever shown a propensity to draw a rating, even though they have an incredibly talented dressing room. Guys like Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, the Dudleys. I mean, you go through that dressing room, Mr. Anderson. You go through that dressing room, they got some, they got some fairly fantastic talent that, if steered the right way, I always think to myself, what would Paul Heyman have done with that dressing room? Because Paul and I have our differences. The man couldn't add 2 and 2 to make 4, but he had a brilliant eye for what the fans wanted to see, at least the fans that we were catering to. And so I have nothing really overtly terrible to say about the lady, except that she had a unique opportunity. She had, the old saying in wrestling was, if you had $100 million in talent in the network, you could make a great wrestling company. Well, TNA has pretty much disproven that point because they had the $100 million and they had the talent and they had Spike Network, which I think is the best network possible for wrestling, and they've still failed miserably. So what do you do and say to that? If I were Bob Carter, as much as I love my kids, and I'm sure he loves Dixie, his daughter, I would in some way get her out of there. We need to call her back to Dallas with the energy market like it is. We need all the family back here to circle the wagons around Panda, whatever, however you want to say it. But get her out of there because she's so easily worked by the people surrounding her. Again, because she's not in the wrestling business. If I hadn't been in it for 30 years, I would be easily worked by the people in this business too.
What do you think about her on air? Because we said this before in the show, and maybe it's not a great thing to say about wrestling fans or just young male, but I think when you're watching wrestling, you don't want to see a woman out there ordering around all your all like the male wrestlers. And I remember that big speech she gave, and I just watched that, and I was like, man, this is not what I want to see, when I'm watching wrestling.
Yeah, it's a square peg in a round hole, and it's a very radical departure from the Dixie Carter that I knew and worked for, because there were a couple times we wanted to write segments for her to be on the air, just in that managerial role, not ordering anybody or doing a wrestling angle, just for her to be the figurehead as the president of the company. And her exact words to me were, "I never want to be on-air talent. I'm a behind-the-scenes person." So I have to wonder what radically changed. Did she become a mark for herself? Did she become a mark for the camera? Were those guys around her, those people that she was very close to in wrestling and listened to nobody else, did they work her into it? Because when I watch it, it looks like a square peg in a round. I mean, she's a very telegenic woman. She's certainly, not displeasing on the eyes. Mm-hmm. She's an articulate woman. But when I see her on camera, and I don't know if it's part of the mindset of me remembering her saying, no, I'm a behind-the-scenes person. I don't need to be on the camera. That's your guys' role. And now seeing that, I see her standing up there and doing the double, when they first announced Hogan, and she's doing the crab with Hogan and stuff. And I thought, God, this is just so far from the Dixie Carter that I remembered. And, and yet it still hasn't proven. The ratings are as anemic as they've always been. The company has shown no propensity or ability to grow its rating or strengthen its audience. And, you have to look at the product at that point. You can't keep ignoring it and saying, well, it can't be Hogan's fault. It can't be Bischoff's fault. It can't be Russo's fault. It can't be Flair's fault. It must be all these other young kids that we're throwing pennies to. Well, those kids drew a one rating before Flair, Hogan, Bischoff, and Russo were there, and they're still drawing the same thing now. So if I said to you, hey, bro, you want to buy my car? I got a great Volkswagen Jet. It's got a souped-up engine in it. You can either buy it for $250, or you can buy it for $25,000. I don't know many morons that would say, let me pay the $25,000. Mm-hmm. But that's the typical mindset from Dixie Carter into the talent.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
I remember the last pay-per-view they had, it was like all X Division, and they said they were kind of upset with it because it didn't, the ratings didn't go up. But what I was thinking, well, the ratings didn't go up, but if they didn't go down with, all these people that, that are paying, mega bucks to, I would think that would be a positive. If you get the same buy rate with, less known people.
Look, I guess they can look for whatever bright light they want because they've been in the dark for so long, that hell, if lightning strikes the building, that's a plus for them. But I honestly think that they had missed their opportunity. That they have now, the fans and the masses have now identified them as WCW Redux. And that's not, in the wrestling game, at least from my perspective, the kind of nomenclature you want to attach to your company. I think they've really missed their last best opportunity. That, for a company that draws 5,000, 5,200, 5,500 buys on pay-per-view, and the president of that company said to me the first day I met her, when I was mentioning to her about how ECW had, come on the grassroots level and grew from nothing and so on, and she said to me, why would I want to copy ECW after all they failed? Well, to me, that's a business 101 question. If a business fails, was the product a failure or was the business a failure? I mean, there's thousands of businesses that fail every year just because, look at what's the bookstore right now? Barnes & Noble, I think it is, or one of them.
Both of them, I think.
Because, because they couldn't get any borders, because they couldn't get funding. Well, it's not because the books weren't interesting. It's not because, it's some bad business moves probably, but because they couldn't get an influx of capital. Doesn't mean that the product that they had on the shelf or the idea for a store to sell books was a bad idea. But as she said that to me, on the monitor from her studio, Soundstage 21, the fans were chanting ECW. And so I couldn't help but catch the poetic, irony of what was going on. Here's Dixie Carter telling me, why would I want to copy that? After all, they failed. Well, our lowest buy rate, I think, was 16,600 or something like that. Yeah. And, we did much stronger buy rates. I'd be willing to bet that Dixie would give her both her left and right eyeballs to have those numbers. Never has, and she never will continue with that product.
Just as a fan, I used to stay up Saturday nights at 2 a.m. on the Spanish channel every Saturday to watch ECW. I doubt I'd do that for TNA, right?
No, absolutely not. And again, it's not the talent. I mean, if Paul Heyman in that dressing room, or that would be a fantastic show to watch. But when you see, Steve Austin used to always say, if Vince McMahon wants to get your ass over, he'll strap a rocket to your ass.
Mm.
Well, think about that quote, and then think about Samoa Joe. They bring this kid in, he's got all the goods, and they push him for 3 or 4 months, and then you don't see him for a month or 2 or 3. And then they bring him back in, and they push him for a month or 2, and then you don't see him for 5 or 6 weeks. And then they bring him back. That's already strapping a rocket. That's strapping a firecracker to his ass. But that's so typical TNA.
Yeah, that was he was the closest guy. Like, I really look forward to watching the TNA pay-per-views when they're like the first year I'd say he was there, because like I knew it would just be like this awesome match, and I just love seeing him. It seems a lot of times like people will be over, or you're interested in them, and then once the company actually would get behind them, like they would lose like all their steam. Once they get pushed, they would go backwards instead of forwards. It's very bizarre.
Well, sure. I mean, look at Bobby Roode. Bobby Roode to me, was the epitome of what that future of that company could have looked like. Bobby reminded me, both in build and his wrestling style, of a young Kurt Hennig.
Mm-hmm.
And when they split him off from Team Canada, he was clearly ready for a massive push to the singles belt and could have easily carried it. Instead, they put him with Eric Young, and Eric Young's a great hand. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything bad about Eric Young, but their way of giving Robert Roode his big singles push was to have him beaten by a guy that was like a second-tier member of Team Canada, and then beat him as he's dressed in a chicken costume.
Right.
And the whole way they handled his manager, they show him on television interviewing Colonel Tom Parker, Bobby the Brain Heenan, sensational Sherry Martel, all these legendary names and wrestling managers. And she comes out. Now, don't get me wrong again. I think Tracy is a sweet girl, Tracy Brooks. She's phenomenal looking, fantastic in what she's learned, great attitude. But to the wrestling fan sitting at home after seeing Parker, Heenan, Martel, and all of these other big names, and then she walks out after she'd already been Michael Shane's valet and my valet, and it was just like, oh, just another chick from the dressing room. It was such a letdown to the fans, but that's typical of TNA again. It's just the way they do business.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we're going to let you go quick here, but do you mind if we take a couple of quick calls? People have been on hold?
Absolutely. Love to.
Right. Cool. We got Brains calling in from England.
Hello. I was going to ask a couple of questions, but he's already kind of answered one. The first one was, what do you think TNA would be like if Heyman, who was rumoured, well, not rumoured, was going to, if Heyman got power in TNA like it was going to be?
Yeah, well, that rumor had buzzed around. I know that he had spoken with him. I don't know how close it came to fruition. And I haven't spoken to Paul since 2004. But I'll say this. If the Paul Heyman that showed up in the ECW dressing room in 1993, showed up in TNA in 2010 when that rumor circulated, I guarantee, absolutely 100% guarantee, TNA would be doing much better ratings, possibly surpassing what Vince would be doing right now. Paul Heyman's a genius when it comes to writing a storyline, and a moron when it comes to basic mathematics. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm. So if you had someone else, doing that and him doing the, we go on, Brains. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, WWE.com recently showed a clip with Johnny Ace, and he was in a tag team with you in a dynamic duo, and it showed you skateboarding down a ramp, and you looked pretty good on the skateboard. I was just wondering if you still know how to skateboard.
No, I do still have the skateboards. I do have a lot of stuff in that time frame, but the problem with the skateboards were, as we would get on television, Vince McMahon, if we had been working for him that same gimmick, would have had specially made ramps for us and everything else. At WCW, they made no special amends to anybody except the very top few guys like Flair at that time and maybe Sting. The first night we were supposed to ride those out to the ring, I think was either in Buffalo or Troy, New York. They had this like 30-foot ramp that went straight down. Now I could stand up on the thing, but I was hardly as proficient as what's his name, Shawn White or whatever. I was hardly as proficient as a Tony Hawk or somebody like that. Far from it, but I could at least ride the thing. But they had television cables at the bottom of that, all across the carpet at the bottom. There was no possible way to ride that down there without taking a crash and burn header, which I was not in intention of doing on the cameras.
Right. Did you ever think years later he'd be such a big part of like behind the scenes?
Johnny and I talked about that a lot, obviously, because I had a strong academic background, and Johnny had a corporate background. He'd worked for, I think, Honeywell up in Minnesota some years ago, and we had talked about that. We had talked at length, months and months and months that we spent on the road together back then, about how poorly management ran those companies and how poorly they treated the talent. And we used to always have the saying, when we get up there, we're going to do things differently. Well, Johnny's been up there, and he continues to do things. Listen, I'm not trying to bury him or anything. I'm just telling like it is. Working for Vince McMahon, you're going to do what Vince McMahon wants and only what Vince McMahon wants. And you may have some very few liberties on the side here and there. So he's in a very tough position. I've talked to a lot of guys that say, oh, he's a jackass. He told me this and then did that and everything else. Again, I've been there. I've been in that la-la land. It's Vince's way or the highway. So if he's been able to keep himself in that number 2 position for the last several years and making the kind of money he's making, keep it up, Johnny. You're doing a great job.
Right. Thanks for calling in, Brains. And by the way, that was he called it from Scotland, not England. Sorry about that.
Hey, to all the great fans in Scotland, man. It's been a long time since I've been over there.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy. Thanks for the questions, man.
Fontana?
Yeah.
You got a question for Shane?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of Shane Douglas, and thank you for all the years that you entertained us, because it was just awesome.
Thanks for watching all those years.
And I was wondering, one of my favorite moments was the time you threw down the NWA title and made the now famous speech of starting the ECW revolution. What was actually going through your mind the moments before you made that speech?
Well, honestly, that speech, I've never been able. I'm not one that has the greatest memory, so I'm not one that's good at going out and reciting 5 to 10 pages of verse. So my promos usually come straight from the heart. I have the key points that I want to make, and I say them however I say them. But I didn't know which way we would go when Paul Heyman had conceived of the idea of throwing the belt down. And this is where I give kudos to Paul as a booker. He never ever ordered any of us to do anything. At least he never did with me. The way he presented the idea to me early in the week, even before I think Todd Gordon knew about it, was, we're going to put you over in this tournament, and we can do this or we can do this. And if we do this, that'll be okay because it will be aligned with the NWA, and we'll make it work for however long it can, and blah blah blah. But if we do this, there's an opportunity for us to start something bigger, and we may also burn ourselves in the ass. I mean, he laid it out very clearly. He didn't propone for one side or the other. He simply laid both sides out. And, as of course, all week long, I'm balancing back and forth in my head. A lot of these guys like Steamboat and Harley Race, and these are a lot of guys, Briscoes, and some of the classic names are guys that I greatly admired and greatly respected. So that was always running in the back of my mind is, should I do it? And if I do, I'm crapping on these guys, and I don't want to do that. But the night that we got to the building, the day that we got to the building, Dennis Corluzzo, followed me around the building like a child with a contract that he wanted me to sign on the spot. And I couldn't hardly sign a contract making me an exclusive talent for the NWA without screwing everything else up. So I kept telling him, I've got to go do this, I've got to go do that, I'll get with you in time, settle down, okay, well, give me a few minutes. I kept trying to break from him, and he was like a dingleberry. I couldn't shake him. I'd go to the bathroom one time, I come out, he's standing outside the bathroom stall, literally. And so that is what really irked me, because 2 weeks prior, he had buried me on Mike Tenay's national radio show. And this was at a time when those of us in the ECW were still making the majority of our money on independent wrestling shows. And he said something like, for any of you independent promoters out there, don't book Shane Douglas because he'll no-show you. And I had never no-showed a show in my entire life. And that either A, the promoter didn't know about beforehand or whatever. And, so when he said that and then followed me around the building that entire night, and when I went to the ring, I still was having second thoughts. And I looked down and saw Dennis sitting at ringside with an NWA belt. And all of a sudden, in the back of my brain, something my father, who had died that year, earlier that year, had said to me was, you can always walk with your feet on the ground, you can soar with the eagles. And I never, as a kid, I'm thinking, what the hell is he talking about? It made no sense to me. And for the first time in my life as a man, I understood what he was talking about. And that's where the speech came from. And if you listen closely, the names, the first 5 or 6 names came out of my head, and then the audience started spitting out names. And I would repeat the names, and I think that's part of the reason why ECW took off, was because it was such a audacious act to do, even though we all clearly knew that the NWA was dead for all intents and purposes at that point. It was a very audacious move, and it sort of set the tone for what ECW would become. This middle finger right in the middle. If you don't like us, there you go. That's the way we'll tell you we don't like you back. And ECW had cut its teeth on being audacious, and for most of its 7 years in existence was pretty damned audacious, and proud for me to have been part of.
Thanks for calling in, Fortina.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
For your answer.
Good
Appreciate
question.
it, man.
We'll take one more caller here. William.
The Franchise, one of my
How you doing,
top
buddy?
5 favorites.
Appreciate it, man. How you doing?
Dude, it's just an honor to talk to one of my heroes, man. You've always been that guy that drove me to watch the wrestling. Your promos, your wrestling, your heel, how you backed it up. Dude, my favorite. No doubt.
Appreciate you watching, man. I really do.
I just had a question. When it comes to like your titles, your ECW titles, or what is your what match like stands out to you as the one that you would consider like your top 5, or your the one that you would consider your favorite?
Well, as far as titles go, when I was a kid in the EWF, Bill Watts' old federation, where I got my break, I was in the company for maybe a month or so when they did the angle that Sting got dropped coming to the ring, and I went to the ring and won the TV title. So for me, that always stands out because that was the first title that I'd ever held. Didn't know what I was doing, but, it was, in hindsight, as a 30-year veteran looking back, I'm thankful to Eddie Gilbert and UWF and the fans that have given me that opportunity, that they saw something in me that probably I didn't even see in myself. But clearly the ECW title, the first time, as Eastern Championship Wrestling, because in the back of my mind, we all sort of had, I hate to say like, hey, we all knew it was going to be a success, because I remember Terry Funk saying, well, Shane, how long do you think we'll ride this train before it runs off the tracks? So there was always that foregone thought that we could fail at any time. But there was something, you could feel an energy in the company that you quite couldn't place your thumb on, but you knew that we were onto something. And so when I won the Eastern Championship Heavyweight title, that was special to me. But then the first time as World Heavyweight Champion, and when we threw the belt down and raised it up in the famous NWA Throwdown, that to me, is clearly the highlight of my career. In fact, my book, the first chapter starts on that night. So it's been a long career. Most people break into this business, and I never ever dreamt of having a career in wrestling. I wasn't that pretentious to think that, hey, I'm good enough, I could have a great long career in this business. I just wanted to have some matches and keep myself in shape. And thanks to the career that I've had, that I was able to capture the attention of the fans and hold them for the years that I did. And what I'm most proud of in that sense, though, is that I was able to do it. I hate to say it because it sounds so corny, but I did it my way. I'm sort of proud of the fact, very proud of the fact that I never appeared on the WrestleMania. Proud of the fact that I never carried the WCW heavyweight title, but my name is still included among the guys that held those belts. And I think that's a large testament to the fans that supported ECW and saw what we were trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for calling, William. Good question.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
Just let everybody know, you just brought up Terry Funk, and he's going to be on the show. He's going to be wrestling. It's going to be awesome.
I'm sorry.
Terry Funk.
Please.
Terry Funk. You just mentioned him. He's going to be wrestling on the show versus Roddy Piper.
Yeah, I just saw Roddy for the first time in several years at a convention out in California in January, and I'm telling you, Roddy looks fantastic. He's in great shape. He looks so healthy and vibrant in the guys. This kind of show is the kind of show that takes me back to being a 12 or 13-year-old kid, because I could sit back and watch these guys, and, Funk, however banged up he is and however much he'll tell you, when he gets in that ring, it's like he transforms into like a 30-year younger version of himself.
Yeah.
and Piper, and Bob Orton is going to be there, and all these guys at the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, so many guys, too numerous to even mention right now. Just go to the website and see this is an incredibly loaded card. For me, I'm going to be sitting back glued to the monitor like a 12-year-old kid with some popcorn. But these are the kind of matches that I love watching.
Yeah, it's just we just actually had dinner with Roddy Piper on Friday, and like you said, he looked in awesome shape.
Yeah, I'm so happy because the time I'd seen him before that, and for a couple of years, he looked like he was aging and sort of like taking on the twilight of his career. And when I saw him in January, it was like, wow, he looks better than he ever did. And for me, that's cool because let's face it, we've lost far too many guys in this business. It's sort of hard for me without going on to my pension about U.S. Senate having hearings in 2005 when a couple of Major League Baseball players are accused of steroids. We've lost like 139, 140 guys. One decimated himself and his family, and still nothing. So it's I think what I would love to see in the business before I'm dead and gone and put in the ground someplace, I'd like to see the business resurge itself, taking care of its talent. Let's face it, Major League Baseball, football, hockey, basketball, all said the same stuff. Unions will kill us. We won't be profitable. We can't possibly do it. And they're all making exponentially more money today than they ever have. I want to see the wrestling business. I'm not advocating a union, but whatever it is to protect the talent from themselves and from those kind of ignominious ends, I want to see the business start to take care of the talent that draws the people to the buildings. And that's nothing more, nothing less will satisfy me.
Mm-hmm. Well, let everybody know it's midnight Central Time this Friday. Psychopathiclive.com. You really, like you said, you have to read the card for yourself. If I go over every name here, you really just think I'm making it up or something. But the card's just crazy. And
who's who? Literally, who's who of wrestling legends. It's an incredible card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I read them off, you'd think I was just trying to name off every wrestler I knew or something. But
exactly. It's going to be a great night.
Yeah, and we'll have a live chat right on our website during the show. It's going to be good times, and I guess you can also get on-demand replay if you can't catch it live. So it's going to be pretty good stuff.
That's
awesome
right.
stuff.
Just like I just want to ask the fans one last time, like these three guys who just called in a minute ago, if watch the show, whether you can see it live or on pay-per-view on Friday night. If you don't like it, don't come back. If you see something that catches your attention, get on the internet and brag about it, because what the fans did for ECW in 92, 3, and 4, the fans have to do again if we're going to recapture the business back from these corporate entities.
Mm-hmm. And it's a perfect time right now. Besides a couple things out there, it's pretty stale at the moment.
Absolutely. Something's got to, it's pretty clear that TNA is not going to be the spark plug that reignites the business, and WWE seems to be slowly dwindling like an old withered up grape on the vine. It's time for something new. Watch us. If you don't like us, don't come back. If you do, support us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming on, man. It's been great talking to you.
Okay, guys. Look forward to seeing everybody out there.
Yeah, I know it's been a long 15 minutes.
We'll take what we can get.
Yeah, all right. Go skip your phone.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, what kind of a promo do you want?
Just tell people to tune in to InYourHeadOnline.com. Anything that pops into mind.
Anything that pops into my mind. All right, all you wrestling fans out there, tune in to Jack and the 1 Inch. Let me start this thing again. Can I do this over again?
Sure, yeah.
Do it all at
You
once?
can.
Are we on the air right now? Are we on the air?
Yeah, we're on the air, but we'll just...
We're on the air? Well, I'm starting again anyhow for all of you nuts out there. Hey, all you perverts, punks, idiots, and fools, tune in to this radio station. What the hell are we promoting now?
InYourHeadOnline.com.
Oh, in your head, right?
Right.
InYourHead.com, right?
InYourHeadOnline.com.
InYourHeadOnline. I'm going to get it right this time. Hey, you've got the funker here, all you idiots, fools, and perverts. Tune in to InYourHead.com. How was that? That wasn't too good.
That was all right. You missed
awesome.
InYourHeadOnline.com. Someone already owns In Your Head.
InYourHeadOnline.com.
Right.
All right, let me try that again.
All
right, here we go one more time. InYourHeadOnline.com with the 1 Incher and Jack. All you idiots, punks, perverts, and fools, be sure and tune in and listen to this show. damn, that was a hell of a promo.
That was great. And
That was much better than Dusty Rhodes could ever dream of doing.
And you covered all our
That's
fans.
badass.
You knew our fan base perfect.
Well, I bet I did.